Welcome back to Midnight Whispers. Don't forget to subscribe, turn off the lights, and let's step into something you can't unhear. She says this story still feels too real for her to tell out loud, but she's finally ready. And she begins by admitting that the phone she's talking about has been dead for years. An old cracked device tucked into a drawer she hadn't opened in so long, she almost forgot it existed. Yet somehow, on a night when the world felt too quiet for comfort, she heard her own name coming from it in a soft, distant tone that didn't sound like hers, didn't sound like anyone she knew, and definitely didn't sound like anything that should be coming out of a device with no battery and no power left in its bones, making her freeze in place as the moment stretched impossibly long. Her breath caught halfway in her throat, like something didn't want her to inhale, as if the room itself sensed what she was about to uncover and shifted around her, heavy with something she couldn't explain, something that felt older than her memories and colder than the air. And she remembers standing in the hallway, staring at the closed drawer, listening to the faint and unmistakable calling of her own name, repeating again and again in the exact same tone. No changes, no breath, no human hesitation, just a loop, perfectly even and disturbingly patient, making each step toward that drawer feel like she was approaching a place she wasn't meant to return to. Because the sound wasn't just calling her name, it was calling it the way she used to say it as a kid, the way she only said it when speaking to herself in the mirror during lonely afternoons she never told anyone about. And as she reached the drawer, the sound suddenly stopped, as if it sensed her arrival, leaving her in a silence so thick it felt like a second presence in the room, watching, waiting, listening. And she remembers pulling the drawer open, only to find the phone lying face down, untouched, lifeless, yet holding an impossible warmth beneath her fingertips, like it had been active just a moment earlier, making her stomach twist with the realization that something was not just wrong, but familiar, uncomfortably familiar, as if the device had been holding onto something of hers she didn't know she had lost. She says she sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at the dead phone in her hand, feeling an unease that crawled beneath her skin as memories she had buried deep started rising without permission, because she remembered exactly why she had stopped using that phone, remembering the morning she woke to recorded audio she never made, long recordings of her breathing as she slept, each one labeled with dates she didn't recognize and hours she wasn't awake for, remembering how she tried convincing herself the phone had been glitching, or maybe recording by accident, until she found one file that wasn't breathing but speaking, her voice repeating a sentence she had never said before, a sentence that made her feel like the walls were closing in around her. "You're not alone tonight," which she didn't understand then and didn't want to understand now, as she sat in her dimly lit room, listening to the soft creaking of the house, feeling like something unseen had settled back into her home the moment she touched that forgotten device. Because the phone had always felt wrong, always felt like it stored more than just data, like it stored pieces of her she never knew she gave away. And holding it again made her feel like something was reclaiming her, something that had been waiting patiently in the dark corners of her past, something that didn't want to be ignored anymore. And she remembers the sound of her name echoing again, not from the phone this time, but from somewhere else in the house, further away, lower, slower, stretched out like someone was trying to learn how to say it by imitating the earlier voice. And she froze when she realized it wasn't coming from a device. It wasn't coming from any speaker at all. It was coming from the hallway that led to her room. And she felt every hair lift along her neck as she whispered, "Who's there?" Not because she expected an answer, but because silence suddenly felt more terrifying than whatever might respond. Yet, even then, nothing replied. Nothing moved. Nothing shifted. Just that heavy stillness that felt more alive than any presence she had ever encountered as she sat gripping the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. She explains that sleep didn't come that night, not even close, because every time she closed her eyes, she swore she heard faint breathing near her door. Not human breathing, but something flat, steady, rhythmic, too controlled to belong to anything alive. And she stayed awake, listening to it echo softly in the hallway like a recording playing on a loop. So she decided to check the dead phone again, out of desperate fear, hoping maybe she had imagined everything. But when she pressed the power button, the screen flickered for a split second, faint, like the last twitch of a dying light. And in that brief flash, she didn't see her home screen or old messages. She saw only one thing, an audio file with today's date and the exact time she had heard her name earlier. And as the screen died again, the breath left her lungs because she knew with absolute certainty she hadn't imagined anything. And she felt something shift in the air beside her, as if the room noticed her realization and responded with the softest, almost playful exhale, too close, too intimate, making her heart pound hard enough to drown out her thoughts while she sat frozen. Clutching the dead phone like it was the only thing keeping her rooted in the moment, and she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been calling her name wasn't confined to the device anymore, that maybe it had used the phone as a doorway, a way back to her life, a way into her home, a way into her memories, because the house no longer felt empty. It no longer felt like her space. It felt occupied by something that didn't need lights or screens or batteries to exist. Something that remembered her childhood voice and could repeat it perfectly. Something that knew how to say her name the way only she could. And as the hours passed and the breathing continued just outside her room, she realized that whatever had come back wasn't here to scare her. It was here because it had always been with her always listening, always waiting, always learning. She says the next morning felt wrong from the moment she opened her eyes, not because anything happened, but because nothing happened at all. The silence too clean and too controlled, like something was deliberately erasing its presence to make her doubt herself. Yet, the dead phone on her nightstand felt heavier than before, almost pulsing with a weight she couldn't understand. And when she picked it up again, she noticed the back casing was warm in a way that felt biological rather than mechanical, as if the device was breathing beneath her palm, and she dropped it instantly, terrified, watching it land face down on the floor without making the usual hollow plastic sound, instead hitting the wood with a dull, soft thud that sounded disturbingly like skin slapping against skin. And she backed away slowly, her heartbeat trembling in her chest as the memory of her name being called replayed in her mind on an endless loop, because she knew then that the voice wasn't trying to frighten her. It was trying to get closer, trying to get clearer, trying to speak the way she spoke, and maybe even trying to sound like her entirely. A thought that made her skin crawl as she realized that the recordings on the old phone hadn't been of her. They had been of something trying to become her, something imitating her breathing, her voice, her tone, practicing her identity one whisper at a time. And the idea that something unseen had been learning how to be her for years, without her noticing, filled her with a dread deeper than anything she had ever felt. Because now it wasn't just calling her name, it was saying it exactly the way she would, down to the smallest inflection, like a perfect mirror of her voice, living somewhere just outside her reach, waiting for the moment she finally turned around. She remembers that the next night was the breaking point, the moment her fear turned into something heavier, something closer to inevitability. Because when the house went dark and the silence settled thick across every room, she heard her name again, not from the hallway this time, but from directly behind her, close enough that she felt the warmth of the breath brushing the back of her neck. And she didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, because she knew with absolute certainty that whatever stood behind her wasn't a person, was alive, wasn't anything that belonged in this world or any other she could understand. And she could feel that its presence had weight, a real physical weight, as if it had stepped fully into existence and stood inches away, matching her breath, matching her stillness, learning her pause. And when she finally gathered the courage to turn around, she saw nothing but the dead phone lying on her bed, glowing faintly in the dark, although it had no battery, no charge, no power, glowing with a pulsing amber light that seemed to sync perfectly with her heartbeat, like the device had found a rhythm inside her and was now beating alongside her pulse. And she approached it slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last as the glow intensified, until the screen finally flickered to life without being touched, displaying a single sentence in the Notes app she hadn't opened in years. "I can say your name better now," followed by a recording icon pulsing slowly, almost invitingly, as if asking her to press play. But she couldn't bring herself to touch it, couldn't bring herself to hear whatever version of herself might be speaking on the other end of that file, because she already knew it wouldn't be her. And she already knew it wouldn't be human. She says she didn't stay in the house after that, didn't touch the phone again, didn't sleep in her room, didn't spend another night under the same roof where something had learned to speak like her, breathe like her, call her the way she called herself in her loneliest moments. But she admits, with a trembling voice, that even after she left, even after she threw the dead device away in a dumpster miles from home, she still hears it sometimes in places where no phone should ring. Places like the inside of her car at red lights, or the aisles of quiet grocery stores, or the dark corners of hotel rooms she never stays in more than one night, hearing her name spoken in that same perfect tone that mimics her voice so well it feels like a thought escaping before she can process it. And every time she hears it, she freezes the same way she did that very first night, because the voice is patient, impossibly patient, repeating her name with the precision of someone who has practiced it for years, someone who knows every breath she takes, every moment she hesitates, every version of herself she thought she left behind. And she says the worst part isn't that it still calls her, and it isn't that she still hears it. The worst part is that lately, when she whispers her own name aloud to ground herself, to prove she still exists, she finds that her own voice sounds slightly different, like something else has been speaking through her first, like something else has been perfecting her tone low, long enough that it's starting to feel more natural in her throat than her own voice ever did. And she ends her story with a quiet confession, saying the one thing she never wanted to admit out loud. "I don't think the voice was trying to imitate me. I think it was trying to replace me."